Good afternoon, everyone. This is David Stearns from Haley Marketing Group, and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley webinar. Today's webinar is all about mobile and some of the things that are starting to take place in the staffing industry, and some of the things that if you're not already doing, that by the end of today's call, you are going to definitely want to put a plan in action to start doing. We're going to talk about a lot of different things in the world of mobile marketing. We're going to look at some things that staffing companies are doing with their websites. We're going to look at trends in recruiting. We're going to look at some ideas for selling. And specifically for today's agenda, we're going to look at the reasons why you need to pay attention to mobile. At the beginning of this year, I think in our first Idea Club newsletter, we talked about 2013 being the real year of mobile marketing hitting the staffing industry, and it's happening very quickly. I'll share some stats on that. We're going to look at some of the things other staffing firms are already doing, some of the apps that are out there. We're going to talk about, besides apps. We've had a lot of questions at Haley Marketing Group recently about, hey, can you help us create an app? And we're going to talk about some of your other options besides thinking about going the route of building apps. We'll take a look at some examples of how mobile is being used for websites, in recruiting, and in selling, and then we'll wrap it up with a quick checklist of things that you need to do to get started on your own mobile game plan. Now, as always, if you have questions along the way, use that question window. Feel free to submit them to me, and I'll do my best to work your questions into the presentation, and if there's something that I don't get to, bring it back at the end during the Q&A session. All right, so let's jump right in. Why is mobile such a big deal? Why are you seeing it everywhere in the marketing world? Why are you hearing about it more and more in the staffing world? The answer is really obvious. It's where your clients and candidates are. And one of the things that kind of shocked me is tablet sales are now outpacing PC sales. Why is that so shocking? Because more and more people are now going to mobile connected devices as their primary means of accessing the internet. And there's another statistics that I have heard. I have not seen the specific numbers, but for many lower income people, disadvantaged workers, a smartphone is their only access to the internet. It's the only access to the jobs that you're trying to have them fill. So let's consider some specific statistics about what's going on in the world of mobile marketing. I joke that mobile has become the crack cocaine of the professional world because none of us can leave our email for more than about 9 seconds. But some amazing statistics. By the end of this year, there's going to be more mobile devices than people on the planet. 84% of people in the world say they can't go a single day without their smartphone. 1 out of every 5 of us are checking our phone every 10 minutes. And if you're doing it on this call, please put it down and pay attention. And for 28% of Americans, a mobile device is now their primary way of accessing the web. And with tablet sales outpacing PC sales, that's probably going to continue to be an increasingly large percentage of the population. But what about in staffing? Is mobile really a big deal if you're trying to sell to HR managers and hiring managers and small business owners, if you're trying to recruit candidates? Here at Haley Marketing, we track Google Analytics on more than 300 staffing and recruiting firm websites. And if you had asked this question, is mobile really a big deal in staffing 12 months ago, we would have said it's an interesting trend. We're seeing a pretty quick rise in the adoption of mobile devices to browse, but it's not significant enough yet to make an impact. Fast forward to today, and we have seen traffic from mobile devices triple in the last year. I talked to some folks at Indeed, and they told me that now 30% of all job seekers are accessing Indeed's job postings via a mobile device. So 1 out of every 3 candidates, roughly, is trying to find your jobs through a mobile device. In staffing, 77%, to be specific, of job seekers admit to using mobile job search apps. we're seeing an explosion in the number of staffing firms that are looking to create mobile apps. And there's a few examples on the screen right here. I'm going to go through a lot of them, from small companies or smaller companies, Frontline Source Group in the bottom left corner, to the big national companies, Adecco, Aquint, to the job boards themselves releasing apps to make it easy to search their jobs and interact with their resume databases. And let's take a look now at some specific examples of what is being done in the world of staffing and HR. Got a long list of apps here. I'm going to review several of them with you. First are job search apps, and as the name implied, this allows the job seeker to go into a big database, put in search criteria, get back a list of jobs, and depending on the app, they may be able to directly apply, or it will link back to the source of the job where they will then apply. So for example, if you're using Indeed search, it's going to take you back to your own job site where someone's going to have to apply through your website. Big question, is your website ready to handle that if they're on a phone? Some of these other apps have the ability to just click and apply right from the phone. And that's the next category, is job seeker tools. If you're going to have someone consider applying for a job from their cell phone, they are not going to fill out your entire online application from a phone. There has to be another way to get that data to you. Now, a lot of this may fall back on your ATS provider to see what options they can give you, or the job board that you're using in conjunction with your website. But there are some job seeker tools. One is an app called Pocket Resume. Another is called Interview Buzz, that are out there to help make it easier for job seekers in their search. Pocket Resume allows people to keep a full version of their resume that they can access online, so that when they're trying to apply, and if the site accepts resumes from Pocket Resume, they just click a button and all of their credentials are sent to you. Interview Buzz is kind of like the advice many of you may provide on your websites to allow candidates to get great advice on how to interview, except Interview Buzz takes it to a whole new level, because what it does is it makes it easy for the candidate to see practice questions and to get ready to do their interview prep as they're on their way to the interview right through their phone. There are more and more HR tools coming out. TimeStation and the Department of Labor have both come out with timesheet applications. Both of them provide, the Department of Labor is a free app. I don't remember if TimeStation is, but the ability to do time entry for mobile app makes a heck of a lot of sense, because it's very easy for the candidate to take care of recording their hours while they're at the work site. Connex's 2X product allows some of the testing and feedback to be done through a mobile device. On the right side of the screen, you see some of the company-specific apps that are out there. Adecco makes their jobs available. They provide career advice through their website, and they allow candidates to do company research so they can go into an interview prepared. Medical Staffing Solutions has their jobs on their mobile app as well as their time card application. Frontline Source Group is primarily jobs. Aquint was one of the nicer ones that I found. Their heads-up application is used for time cards. One of the things they do that I love is they have check-ins. So when the candidate arrives on the job site, your staffing coordinator doesn't have to call. They just go to their phone and hit the check-in button, and the staffing firm, Aquint, knows the candidate's arrived. The candidates can also set their own availability through Aquint's app, so they can let the staffing firm know when they're available and looking for assignments. They can search jobs, and they can directly contact their local recruiter right through the app. Kelly's Talent Project is an interesting one. Unlike the other apps that have been focused primarily on the job seeker, this is focused more on the employer, and it's all about thought leadership content being brought to the employer. So one of the places, if you want to check out all of these apps, is I went to Google Play, and I went to where they allow you to download all their apps, and I searched for all the staffing apps, and I just read a description of what the other companies are doing, and I suggested everybody else go to Google Play. It was easier to find there than it was on iTunes, and check out what other staffing firms are doing. You can see examples of screenshots of all the different applications built into their online app, and you can see who the intended audience and how they're attempting to better integrate mobile into their recruiting and customer service process. And the last category are specific apps that are built around mobile or social recruiting. Socialized HR is an interesting one. If this is another way to do an online application, I haven't seen this integrated with any staffing firms' apps or websites at this point, but you can take your phone, take a picture of your resume, and it will take it and feed it to the ATS as a PDF. So there's a picture of your resume that you can submit. Now you don't have to fill out all the fields in the ATS. JobVite is used to do social sourcing. JobSpeak is really an interesting one. It's a free mobile job posting service where you literally can speak a 60-second hiring message into JobSpeak, and then it will cross-post it on lots of other sites for you. A couple of other, LinkedIn and Search on the Go, I put those as social recruiting because they're not specifically apps built for the staffing industry, but they're apps that make it easy for you to find candidates wherever you are, for you to find, and we'll talk about more about using LinkedIn in the sales process, you to find the right people to connect with while you're on the go. And Search on the Go is specifically to help job seekers find more opportunities wherever they are. So again, I went to Google Play, did a little research to find lots of examples, and one of the things I'm going to present to you at the end of today's presentation, but I'll give you a little heads up, is before you make any decisions about creating an app, take some time to really look at what other companies are doing and think about the strategy for your business online and what functions you really need and what you don't. And as I said, we'll get back to that concept in just a little bit. Now, there's lots of really cool things happening in the world of apps, and it seems like such an awesome way to engage job seekers, to engage your existing talent, to potentially engage employers as well, but there's a dark side. And the dark side of apps, subtitle here says, get out your checkbook. Development costs, there are some do-it-yourself platforms that are fairly low cost, but in general, you need some pretty heavyweight programming skills to create an app and fairly high costs. I saw, in doing the research for this presentation, the low end of apps was in the $3,000 to $5,000 range. The high end of apps was over $250,000. And that's not all you need to do is build one app, because an app is specific to a piece of hardware. So what works on your iPhone doesn't work on your Android device and doesn't work on your BlackBerry. You have to create a separate version for each platform. You also may need to consider separate variations for a phone versus a tablet. And then, even after you've gone through all of the effort and all of the expense to build the app, there is no guarantee that your app will be accepted into, at least the Apple store. We had a client out on the West Coast, spent a lot of money building an app that allowed people to get access to all of their jobs. It was a very nice app. They went to the folks at iTunes, and iTunes rejected the app, saying they could have done all of this stuff through your website. There is no reason you needed to have an app. We're not accepting it. So all of that investment went down the toilet because they didn't have a real functional reason for needing an app. And we're going to talk about some of the options to apps and what those functional reasons are in just a minute. The other dark side of apps, this is not the field of dreams. If you build it, they won't come. If you build it, you have to get it found. You have to market it to people so that they're aware that your app exists. And then probably even more challenging is to get them to download the app. There's a phrase that is called app fatigue. When we get our new iPhone, we get our iPad, the first thing we do is we dive into the App Store and we download lots of cool stuff that we want to play with that's going to make our device really useful for us. And then a month later, we don't download quite so much. And then 3 months later, we're pretty happy with most of the apps that are on our device. And a year from now, maybe if we read about something really cool, we'll download it, but in general, we're not adding more apps to our mobile device. So if you're going to create an app, now you have to give a very, very compelling reason for your clients or your candidates to download it. Now, in the Aquint example we looked at, their app is part of their service process. You're not going to go out working for Aquint if you don't download their app because you can't do your check-ins, you can't do your time cards. I'm sure for them it's not very difficult to get people to download the app who are already in their talent pool. It's probably difficult to get people outside, and I know I've talked to a lot of staffing companies that are thinking about apps in order to get more people to engage with their jobs online. And I'm going to tell you, don't spend the money trying to do that. An app is not going to attract many more people to you. You are much better doing some other things that we're going to talk about in just a minute to attract people to your website and the mobile version of your website. So speaking of which, beyond apps, is that the only way to do mobile marketing? And the answer is a most definite no. There are lots of ways. Here are 5 specific variations on how you could take your staffing firm mobile. And before I describe each of them, we had a question come in. What company uses apps only? The company I was talking about was Aquent. A-Q-U-E-N-T, Aquent. I don't know that they only use mobile apps. They just have a very nice mobile app. If you go to Google Play, you can see everything their mobile app does. I'm sure they spent quite a bit of money to create such a nice candidate experience online, but you will see when you look at all of the screens, it's absolutely essential to their service process. And we're going to look at a couple of those screens later in the presentation. All right, so let's look at all these different mobile alternatives. What are they? Well, first off, our native applications. This is truly when we use the phrase app, what it means. We're creating a program that is designed to run on a specific mobile device. It's going to run on your iPhone. It's going to run on your BlackBerry. It's going to run on your Android-based phone. These are applications that need to rely on some of the capabilities built into your device's operating system. So if you're really into things that might integrate with the camera, with GPS, and some of you who are very tech savvy may disagree with me because now GPS can be done without a native app. But if you want to take advantage of functionality that's not available through the web, that's only available on the hardware the person's holding, you need a native application. If your candidates are going to be using your application in a place they don't have internet access or they don't have good cellular access, maybe they're in a warehouse where they just can't get access because of the way the structure is built to the outside world, they may need an app in order to enter their time data or to do other interactions with your firm. The next category are web apps or web applications. A web application is essentially like a mobile app. It has certain functionality that enables the individual using the app to interact with your firm, but everything runs over the web. You have to be connected to the web in order to use the app. These applications typically run using the browser capability of whatever the mobile device is. So it could be Safari, it could be Google. The type of device doesn't matter. You don't have to build different versions. And that leads us to the next one, which is a responsive website. And that's thinking about your company website and building it in such a way that the site design, the content, actually responds to the device that it's being shown on. And I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. Next are mobile themes. Depending on how your website's currently built, it may be very inexpensive and very quick to simply add a mobile theme to your current content management system, and now your site is optimized for mobile devices with very little cost and very little programming. And the last one is having a separate mobile site, which you would do if for some reason you couldn't add a mobile theme and you didn't want to go through the cost of rebuilding a responsive site. So let's take a look at all these in a little more detail. Native apps. Again, those are the ones, they run using the operating system of the specific device that someone's on. They give you the nicest user interface. They are the fastest because you're not relying on an internet connection, whether it's Wi-Fi or 4G, in order to get data back and forth. They're ideal when you have a lot of interactive features that you are having your candidates do and you don't want a lot of calls back to your company database. The more you go back and forth, the more it slows things down. And if all that data and all the programming to get that data is already on the phone, it's much faster. If you have to run very complex calculations, they can be slow if you're using anything other than a native app. If you have to do detailed reporting, you would want to use a native app. If you're using the mobile processing, again, the camera, the GPS, if you're integrating with SMS or text messaging, if you want to use click-to-call, a lot of these features are very nice and are very easy to do if you're programming in a native app. What is happening with web apps, they're getting closer and closer because web apps, I'll explain in a minute, use a programming language called HTML5, which is getting more and more robust that allows you to start to do more and more of the things you can do in a native app. But today, native apps still handle all of these features the best. And lastly, if there's going to be no web connection, you absolutely must have a native app. Typically, apps are best for applications that are platforms for doing something else. So Facebook has an app. Why? Because that's your platform for interacting with all of your Facebook data. Twitter has an app. That's the best for your Twitter interface. Gaming is really good on apps. Angry Birds couldn't exist as a web application because there's just too much calculation, too much processing going on. If you look at the things on this Adecco app, searching jobs, career news, favorites, videos, branch locator, and settings, actually all could be done without having a native app. All right, let's take a look at web apps. A web app or HTML5 app is one in which all or some parts of the software are downloaded from the website every time it's run. It can usually be accessed from all web-capable mobile devices. For the tech geeks out there, web apps don't depend on specific operating systems. They aren't device dependent, and that means you don't need to create multiple versions of the app to have them work everywhere. The best known web app is YouTube. So when you call up YouTube on your phone, it's actually pulling everything off of the web. It is a web application. Even if you downloaded the icon for YouTube and it looks like an app on your phone or your iPad, it's actually a web app. It's less costly because you only have to build one version. Development time tends to be faster. There is zero cost of distribution. You don't have to get into the Apple Store, which, by the way, takes 30% of your revenues if you're charging anything for the app. You don't have to convince people to download your app. Web apps are ideal when you've got content delivery. And there's actually a way, and I don't have an example of it in the presentation, you can encourage people, if you only have a web app, to download an icon for your web app right to the home page or home screen on their iPad or their smartphone so that they just click the button and they call up your web app just like it's a native app. It looks almost the same, and it's great for content delivery. Jobs are content delivery. Blog posts are content delivery. Most of the communication that you do with your clients and candidates is really content delivery, not processing. And I've had a couple questions come in before we go on to look at website design itself. What about mobile plugins in lieu of a full mobile theme? The answer is you can use mobile plugins, and I think the terms can be used interchangeably. If you're building in a platform like WordPress and you have a mobile plugin that gives you the equivalent of a full different look and feel for your mobile version. Somebody talked about the mobile theme that comes with Jetpack. So that's, I'm sure, someone who's using WordPress. And yes, that will allow you to do a mobile interface as opposed to a mobile theme. You would want to look at essentially the design options you have with both and which gives you the most flexibility. We're seeing some of the plugins that we've used to do mobile don't give that much design flexibility, which is a limitation. So a separate mobile theme gives us a little more control over the look of the mobile site. Although even as I say that, one of the ones we've been using for a couple of years just had an update, and their new mobile plugin is now much more robust in terms of design. And the next question was, are these apps specifically for job seekers and candidates, or are there apps that can be used by clients? There are not currently a lot of apps that we have found that staffing firms that are available for client access. And you're going to see at the end of the presentation, the most likely place that you're going to get a useful app for your clients is going to be from your staffing software provider when they have functionality like checking reports, approving time cards, and the other things that they might do through your mobile web portal. But it's going to really be more up to the staffing software provider to create a mobile optimized way for your clients to interact with you. We have not seen any sales tools that are native apps designed towards attracting employers being used in the staffing industry. All right, so moving on from apps, let's talk about websites. And I mentioned something a couple minutes ago, a responsive website. A responsive website is a website that looks different depending on where it's seen. You don't need any sort of app at all. One version works for everything, your desktop, your iPad, your phone. It's really an ideal solution the next time you build your company website. The idea is if it's on a desktop, all of the images and all of the content will lay out in a particular order. When it moves to an iPad, if you're holding it, as you see in the picture, if you're holding it vertically, it's one way. If you turn it horizontally, it may change to another. And when you see it on your phone, it may have a different layout. Specific example, our website. If you come to our website on a desktop, you'll see that we have our logo at the top, a line of text that runs the width of the site, and 4 buttons to kind of introduce you to what we do. We use a widescreen view, and we use some doodles out in the margins to draw you up and down on the site. But when you're on an iPad, we don't have that much screen width to work with. So what we did is we took the text that normally would appear below our logo, and we just have it move up next to the logo so that those 4 main buttons are not off the page when somebody first comes to our website. Happens automatically when somebody goes to our site on an iPad. When you go to our site on a phone, the logo moves, the text moves again, and you'll see the menu, the services, freebies, our work, why Haley, now turned into a purple button that says menu that you have to click to open. And that's a very common way to have a responsive website because you want your menus to be able to open or collapse, so they use minimal screen real estate when someone is trying to navigate your site. So this is an example of a responsive website. For most staffing firms, the next time you build a website, this is the way you're going to want to go. You build your website on top of a responsive platform. When we're building our sites today, we're building all of them on top of a responsive platform, so they can be programmed to adjust to the size of the device displaying it. Now, I will warn you, it is extra programming and extra work. Just because you say, hey, I want a responsive site, don't expect the price to be the same, because somebody has to figure out how are we going to make everything change based on the layout, and then they have to program all those options into your website to make this happen. And even when you build on a template that is designed to be responsive, you still have to think through physically what's going to change and programmatically how do we make it happen. You're seeing more and more people talk about building responsive websites. And the nice part about a responsive website is you build the content, you maintain it in one place, wherever you are, everything's there and it looks good on any device. But there's a downside to responsive. All the content is there. And you may find that you don't really want everything available on a smartphone that you want available on your desktop. You may want the responsive design for your desktop and your iPad view, but for your phone, you may want to have something different that's a condensed version of your website. And that's where the next option comes in, which is a mobile theme. This is less costly than responsive. You can still maintain one version of all your content, but very often with mobile themes, or the plugins, as someone asked earlier, you can control which pages display and which don't. So you can cut down the content very easily. Some of that can be done in responsive as well. It's just not as streamlined as it is in the mobile themes. For many of the mobile themes we've seen, it's very easy for an end user who's not technical to turn on and turn off pages that you want to display. The big weakness of a lot of mobile themes, and I mentioned this is changing, is the design may be limited. Now, if you already have a website built in WordPress or other content management systems, there are probably very inexpensive or even free themes that can be added to your site that would take all your content and make it available in a optimal viewing orientation for mobile. You may need to work with your web developer to then figure out, well, how do we tweak the styling to make it look better, and how do we figure out how best to control what we see and what we don't see. There is work that is involved with really creating a optimized mobile theme. And the last option, probably the least desirable, is to create a separate mobile site. And it's least desirable not because it doesn't look good, but you end up with 2 sites to manage. It's ideal when you have an old website that you can't easily update. So you don't really have a choice to simply add another theme in. You're not ready to invest in building a whole new website. There are ways to build a separate mobile site very cost effectively to enable visitors to see all of your content and have an experience that is much more effective for any device they might be using to browse your website. So what's best for you? A responsive site is going to be best when you're building a new site. You want true device independence. You want all the content in all the places, and you have a sufficient budget to really think through how do we want to change the layout, the content, the formatting for each device. A mobile theme is ideal when you have a content management system-based website. You want to have just one version of the content. You don't want to keep separate versions. You want control over which pages display and which don't, and you really want a low-cost solution. And then having a separate mobile site is typically the best option when you have no other choice. You have an existing non-mobile friendly site. You're not ready to invest in a new site. You want different content for mobile, and you have a desire for low cost. Now, these are not absolute rules. There's a lot of gray area in between the three, and if anyone has a specific question and needs help after today's call, feel free to contact us, and one of our consultants will be happy to walk you through your options and make recommendations. Now, you may be wondering, when I showed you which option works best for you, I didn't include apps at all. And there's a reason for that. For the majority of people on today's call, you don't need an app. You do not need to spend thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to create an app for your staffing company. You need to spend some money to create a mobile optimized web experience. Your candidates are going to your website via a smartphone or other mobile device. But for recruiting, everything you'd want to do can be done via the web. You don't need an app. If you need to interact with people more, you can also rely on other apps that are already out there and integrate them into your process. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all apps that are out there that you can leverage in recruiting and business development without spending any money building your own company's app. I don't think most staffing companies need an app simply because it's going to be hard to get people to download your app. And the other thing is it's very likely you're going to see some form of app provided by your staffing software vendor in the not-too-distant future, because they're going to want to give your clients and candidates better ways to interact with your staffing business. And if they're going to create an app to interact with you, you don't need the expense to build it on your own. So unless you really are going to automate your service process, something like time cards, and you really need some of those native features, I would say skip thinking about apps and instead thinking about mobile websites and which of the three options you see here are going to make the most sense for your business. All right, so what's going on in the real world? How are companies using mobile in the staffing industry? Well, number one, a mobile optimized website. We just talked in great detail about the options for mobile optimized. However, the majority of the industry is not there. PrideStaff, you see on the left, gorgeous website, won an award from the American Staffing Association last year, and beautiful mobile version of their website. Express, big company, national presence, no mobile presence whatsoever. Most of the staffing industry has done nothing to address their mobile presence, so just by being on today's webinar, you know more than the majority of people in the industry. But this is such a big oversight because if you're not starting to come up with a mobile website game plan, you're not sufficiently providing solutions to job seekers, and you're going to suffer in your recruiting in the days ahead. And I was going to say years ahead, but really it's in the days ahead, because 30% of people are already trying to get to your jobs through a mobile device. Customer service. I mentioned Aquint earlier, and here are a couple of screenshots from their mobile device as well, one from Medical Staffing Solutions. I thought their time card application was gorgeous. Very simple, highlight the day, pick your start time, pick your end time, move on to the next day. Really easy for the candidate to understand, beautiful interface. And one of the things I didn't mention about creating apps, if you're going to get into that business, you are now in the website and the software design business. Designing a great interface for humans is really hard. So If you're still thinking about, hey, we'd love to have a really good app to do something, I strongly encourage you to shop as many different apps as you can to see how they handle similar functionality. Aquent did a beautiful job on their time cards and their check-ins. Really simple. The ability to check in when you get to an assignment, or in this case, ability to say, hey, I'm available, hey, I'm not available, and when, and send a note to the recruiter. Gorgeous and simple. And that's the key to mobile. Keep it simple. Medical staffing solutions, they have a very simple page. Call us, email us, directions, have a recruiter contact me. They've got it as an app you can download. Honestly, would have worked just as well as a mobile site. So they didn't really need to spend the money to get people to download that because there's no functionality on that page that requires the hardware that is used to drive the app. Some of the specific ideas for mobile apps you might consider: you see time cards, you see check-ins, orientation information, being able to push out specific information to your candidates, showing them more information about the assignment. So maybe the directions, who the supervisor is, what the job duties and responsibilities are, so that as they're on their way to work, they can make sure they know exactly what to expect, and the phone would be a good place to get that when you want to have it available just to your candidates. If you're going to provide access to reports, that would make sense to do from a mobile app. And again, my first call would be to my staffing software provider saying, you know, what are you going to do for me in terms of a mobile app to interact with my clients and my candidates? Because I want to see what's coming before we make any plans to build anything on our own. You also may want to talk to your clients and candidates about what their expectations are. You saw a lot of examples of the big national staffing companies who have created apps. If you're competing with some of those companies, get out and talk to your clients. See if they're using the apps. If so, see what features matter to them. And I think it would be very enlightening to find out from firsthand feedback what matters to your clients, and then make decisions about what to invest in based on what people tell you they're currently using or they really want. In recruiting, the most important thing, and this is an absolute essential, is to have a mobile job board / career site. We'll see that in just a second. You want to give people real ability to contact you, apply with you via their smartphone. So they need to be able to apply with LinkedIn or email themselves the link to the job description so they can apply in when they get back home, or be able to upload their resume from Dropbox or Google Drive. You want to make it easy for people to really search your jobs and correspond with you while they're surfing for jobs, which is very often going to be done on a phone. From a recruiting standpoint, your phone is great for social sharing. So this is your recruiters and your salespeople using your phones to share content on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, whenever they have some downtime, to help brand your company, position your firm as experts, and interact with people who might not know you. Now, these aren't apps you'd build. This is more about using existing mobile platforms in a new way. And the company you see on screen right now is a company in Ireland that is using Twitter to recruit. And it's a kind of a new application. What they're doing is they are posting jobs with a link back to specific job information on their website. Clever idea. The report I read about what they're doing didn't have any feedback on the success of the campaign, but because they're going for IT folks, what I liked about it is they were demonstrating, hey, we're innovative in our approach to recruiting, just like we want our candidates to be. One of the other tools you would look at is LinkedIn has a tool called Check-in, and you might want to go to LinkedIn's website and check out the new Check-in tool, which, if you're going to a job fair, is an easy way to build a talent community with the people you meet by just having them check in to your private talent community right while they're there talking to you at the job fair. I mentioned a mobile optimized job board or career site. And full disclosure, all the screenshots you're seeing here are from Haley Marketing's new job board that came out in January. We allow people to search jobs by keyword, location, and then some advanced searching capabilities. That's what you see on the left screen. But very simple interface that people could use on their phone. When people see the results, the middle screen, they can open a button to filter the jobs by categories or locations or other criteria. They can see a summary of each individual job, and if they click on the job, it then takes you to a panel like the one on the right, which is the details of a specific job, where you have a box showing a highlight of the details. You can scroll down and read the full job description, and then we offer 3 ways to apply. You can apply online, which would require filling out a few forms, or if you're on a smartphone here, you can use your Apply with Indeed or Apply with LinkedIn to one click and apply for a job right from your phone. I will tell you that since our clients went live with this mobile recruiting solution, not only is it mobile optimized, but it's search engine optimized, our clients saw a 30% increase in candidate traffic to their jobs as soon as they went with this new job board, this new user experience, and optimizing every individual job for search engines. Now, how about in sales? Here I'm not going to talk about your own website, but it is ways to engage with the people that you want to work with. So what do you see in the upper left corner here? The QR code. I've seen more and more staffing companies thinking about how do we integrate QR codes into our marketing. And a QR code, essentially, if you're not familiar with it, is that funny little graphic that if you have a smartphone, you can take a picture of it with a QR reader application. That is an app people would download because it uses the camera on your phone. It reads the code, and that code is basically nothing more than the URL of a web page. So you want to take somebody from the QR code right to the appropriate page on your website, which, if you've optimized it for mobile, is going to have a great mobile experience. Let's say you don't have a mobile optimized website, you still want to use QR codes. Well, then you would set up a page that is mobile optimized and direct your QR code to the URL of that site. So that's one way to use QR codes. If I'm selling to someone, I might use direct mail to send them a QR code because they can just take a picture with their phone rather than having to go to a URL of a website, type it in on their computer. If I'm at a trade show, I can hand out something with a QR code on it because people aren't going to go to their computer and then type in my URL. They can use the reader right there at my booth and go to the website. So if you think about how to engage people, QR codes are a way for immediate access to something on the web. Bottom left corner is a presentation that's on an iPad, and instead of handing a brochure to someone, you can have the ability to have an iPad where you take and create a Keynote, which is like a PowerPoint presentation, where you use it for presenting information on your firm, or in the case of the one you see here, an educational presentation that the client holds in their hand, and the salesperson can actually control using their iPhone as a remote control. Some of the other examples on the screen, in terms of selling, you see the 2 gray boxes. One is a search that says Haley Marketing Group, and the bottom is My Inbox. And I'm using an application here called TweetDeck. I watch Twitter fairly regularly to see, hey, what are people saying about the staffing industry? The one on the top is Haley Marketing Group. Well, what are people saying about Haley Marketing Group on Twitter? Is anybody asking questions of us? Are they sharing things that we're happy they're sharing? Your salespeople should be using apps to monitor social media so that they know what's being said about your company, so they know and can find organizations that are looking to hire. And in the bottom center of the page, there's kind of a funny conversation I had with a person at the executive forum a year ago. So the person said, hey, let's talk tonight at the reception, and I'll stop by your booth and we can set a time. And then somebody I missed, sorry, I missed you last night. Can we meet up at the reception tonight? Sure, but you should be paying attention to the speaker. Lots of laugh. I'm sitting right behind you. And from me, busted. Well, this was a real conversation I had, and this resulted in a great meeting with John, his CEO, and a new client as a result of going to a conference, paying attention to who was talking, and actively reaching out and engaging with other attendees at the conference. And the last thing in the sales is the upper right corner, and that's LinkedIn's app. Your salespeople should be using LinkedIn all day long, right after every call, to connect with the people they're meeting with. They can go back to their car, and they can send an invitation to connect. Show that immediacy. Make sure they're following up. If you're using, and you want to share information, you could be using Google Drive, or you could be using Dropbox to store materials that the salesperson could send out right after the call to the prospective client as a follow-up, or even links to relevant information on your website. These are some relatively simple things. Now, I got way away from talking about apps here because really you're thinking about mobile as a component of your sales strategy and how to train your sales force to better use their smartphone in their sales process. They can be using it for social listening. They can be using it for sharing content on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Google+. They can be using it to make direct connections with individuals to build their personal networks and to start conversations they might not have been able to create via the telephone. And you can also be thinking about how to do mobile search engine optimization and mobile client relationship management. The application we use for CRM is called Sugar CRM, and there's a mobile version of it, so I can jump right into Sugar at the end of a call and get access to all of our company information through my phone. From an SEO perspective, mobile is very different. Mobile is more about location and making sure your website really focuses on the locations where you are. And people on mobile phones tend to do shorter searches. They don't use as long of keywords. So you need to think about, how do I write content on my site that is based around shorter keyword strings. This is where doing things like blogging becomes even more critical, so you can have more pages built around shorter keywords than you might on your staffing website. All right, let's kind of bring it to a conclusion. Getting started, it really is as easy as 1, 2, 3. First thing we need to do is this 1, 2, 3, analytics. If you do not already have access to your own Google Analytics, get access to it. Take a look. How many people are coming to your website from a mobile device? Google Analytics will show you. Is it 5% of your traffic? If so, I wouldn't do a lot right now. Is it 30% of your traffic? If so, I'd get serious. Watch the trends over time. How fast are your visitors switching, the percentage of your visitors switching from desktops to mobile devices, and what mobile devices are they using? You can learn all this from analytics. If you see that, hey, look, if I look back a year ago, there was almost no mobile access, and now it's 10%, but in the last 2 months it went from 3% to 10%, you can see that trend occurring, that I better get prepared because there's this massive ramp up happening in people coming to our website from a mobile device, and we need to get prepared. And then the third item here is to actually get prepared, to come up with a strategy. Throw out the idea, I got to go build an app, and instead think about a strategy. Are you using mobile for recruiting, business development, customer service, or all of the above? If you're using it for recruiting, what specific things are you trying to do? Same thing with selling, same thing with service. Make a list of everything you want to accomplish via mobile, because that will tell you how you will go about accomplishing it, whether it's a native app, a web app, or a responsive site or a mobile theme. You want to think about, is this going to be more of a, we need a brochureware site online, just some short information and maybe our jobs, or do we really need to build just a career site, because we can see it's mostly only our candidates, because when we looked at the Google Analytics, we saw that everybody who came to our mobile site went to the job seekers area, so we don't have clients going to mobile. You want to figure out how people are using your site and then think about the content to include strategically based on who's coming to your site. Then you can make a list of the specific content and features that you need to create, and then how you will create them. In terms of mobile considerations, here's your next item list. Number 1, design. Do you want a responsive design, a mobile theme, or a separate mobile site? When designing for mobile, there are some very important considerations. Keep your buttons larger so they're easy for people to see. If we looked at the example earlier of Express personnel, they had lots of links, very tightly spaced. It's fine on a desktop when you have a mouse. If you're like me and you have fat finger syndrome, you can't push one link very easier without doing that pinch thing to make the page giant, so you're sure you're clicking the right link. So you really want to make sure your phone number is prominent, your contact via email is prominent, and any calls to action are prominent and easy to find. If you're on a content management system that supports mobile themes, that's probably the easiest way to go mobile. It's probably the fastest. If you're on an older system, you're probably going to have to go with a separate mobile site or invest in a rebuild. When you do go to the next rebuild, consider, do we want responsive? Do we want a separate mobile theme? Talk to your design firm about the options and figure out what's going to make the most sense for your business. Second thing is think about content. You probably want more information on the desktop version of your site than on the mobile. So plan out, what are we going to include, what are we going to exclude? Are we going to do it a page at a time, or are we actually going to have pages where on the desktop version, the information about us is going to be nice and long and very robust. But on the mobile, we want a short paragraph. We really need to think about how do we want to divvy up the content. I mentioned mobile SEO. Give consideration in your overall website design for lots of location information, that your address and phone number is easy to find and easy for Google to find, that you are optimizing the site for all device sizes. This is where responsive tends to make a lot of sense. And that you're thinking about, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, shorter search strings that people would use to find you, because from a mobile standpoint, they're going to use shorter keyword phrases than they will when they're typing out on their desktop. And then lastly, then pick the right platform. Do we need a website or an app? Now, I'm going to wrap things up thinking a little bit beyond everything we've talked about so far. We've talked about websites in detail. We've talked about apps in detail. What are some other things you can do to leverage mobile in your staffing business? And here are 3 things. Number 1, SMS, text messaging. Some staffing companies are using this. I'll give a shout out to the folks at Call that not only do they allow you to broadcast jobs via calls, they do a nice job allowing you to broadcast jobs via text, so that you can engage people via text messaging on their smartphones, because that is the number one way people communicate back and forth on a smart device. Next is social. I've made some reference already to using social as part of your online strategy, but think about social to create more mobile engagement, getting people to want to read your content while they're online. A lot of people are doing their reading, their email reading, their social reading while they're on a phone. So you want to make sure that you're sharing content that would be interesting to your followers on Facebook. You want to make sure you're sharing content in appropriate groups on LinkedIn, because it's very likely to be consumed on a mobile device. And if you are blogging, as you all should be, and you're sharing blog posts on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, make sure when people come back to read the post on your website, the blog layout itself is mobile optimized. On Facebook, extend your mobile brand by regularly adding pictures and stories. And on Twitter, install an application like Hootsuite or TweetDeck so that you can listen to what other people are saying about your business, your competitors, trends in your industry. Use it to direct message prospects and hot candidates when you're at conferences or trade shows or job fairs. Add hashtags to the things that you're posting so that when people use Twitter as a search tool, which one of the ways they use it is searching jobs, they'll look for hashtag jobs and hashtag your city or hashtag job title. Adding hashtags to your tweets allows your messages to get found by people who you may not be connected with. And then lastly, your staffing software. As I mentioned a couple of times, contact your vendors. Ask them what's coming down the pipe. A lot of them have apps they're building for you to engage with the staffing software. I have not seen any yet that are having apps to allow you to engage your clients and candidates via an app, but I would assume that it's coming, and if it's not coming, give them a push. Because for all of the heavy calculation-based integration, the reporting, that's all of the interaction that people want to do with your staffing software, your ATS, that does lend itself to being on an app, and I would push the software vendors to give you that option or license you an option to have an app, because it's going to be more cost-effective for you. And that is our overview of mobile in the staffing industry. I've had a few questions come in. I'll address them now. If you have more questions, please continue to submit them. And if something comes up after today's call, don't be shy. Give us a buzz. Send us an email or direct message me on Twitter or contact with me on LinkedIn. Be happy to answer. One question, do you find that the apply with LinkedIn or Indeed gives less qualified, i.e. lazy, responses? And the answer is we don't know. It would make sense that it would, but I think it's more likely to be the other way. people are getting used to being able to take advantage of time-saving tools. And if your ATS, if your career portal, if your online job board doesn't have this feature, people are just going to say, I'm not bothering to fill out the forms. You're too much of a pain in the rear end. I'll go to the next company that does. So yes, you do run the risk you might get more lazy responses, but I think you run a bigger risk that you're going to take very qualified candidates and make them not want to apply with you because it's too hard to apply. And then the next question was, do you have to pay for the Apply with LinkedIn feature? No, LinkedIn does not charge anything to use their Apply with LinkedIn, nor does Indeed. However, there is an effort to set it up. So depending on how you're having it done, there's a small fee. So for example, when we do it for our clients, we charge $60 to set it up because we've got programming to do on our end. $60 for either Apply with LinkedIn or Apply with Indeed, or if you're going to do both at once, is $60 for both because we can touch both things at the same time. So it's not a major expense, but there is programming that has to be done to make it work. And we just had another question come in. What if you have a reason to believe your ATS provider has just reported their crusty AS400 30-year-old program to the cloud by running it on virtual machines? It's likely that the ATS software vendor will have a strategy or even a chance to compete with more modern ATS systems in mobile. I love the question. I would confront my ATS vendor directly. Now, they may have ways to get the data out. They may build a separate mobile app, and depending on the technology they're using, they may not have any trouble pulling data out of their old AS400-based technology and making it available on the web and then pushing the data back in. You know, when we integrate with many different staffing software vendors for our job board. We're not dependent on what the staffing software vendor offers in their ATS. We get their data out. We put it on your website, which is how we can optimize it for search engines, and then when somebody applies, the application goes back into the ATS. So hopefully your ATS vendor is going to do similar things where they take the data out, they make it mobile optimized, they put it back in without having necessarily to rebuild everything. If your ATS vendor has no mobile strategy and you look at your analytics and see a big trend towards mobile, I would look at somebody else for the future. Next question, is there some benefit to having candidates come to the office and fill out an application or turn in a resume? I prefer having a chance to meet with them. What we're finding is it makes a lot of sense to still interview people in person, and it depends on the kind of staffing that you do. If you're doing a lot of high-end professional staffing and you're recruiting candidates all over the country, no, you're going to do everything via remote. If you're doing a lot of industrial staffing and one of your tests is this person reliable, setting up an appointment and having somebody show up is a great test. The general feeling that I have about doing things online is if you can help people save time as a first step, more people will apply, better qualified candidates will apply, but don't eliminate face-to-face contact because there's too much that is required to really assess behavioral traits and fit and everything else about people's personality that you're going to get through an in-person conversation or a Skype-based conversation where you're actually talking to someone. The next question is having to use Windows Remote Desktop a good indicator, and this is going back to the question about how the ATS works, a good indicator that this is the case. If somebody is having to use Windows Remote Desktop, yeah, you're using a third-party platform to go over the web and access their software. That's going to be totally independent of the decision about mobile. So that's really more about how your staffing companies can interact with their software. And I don't know if there's any sort of Windows Remote capability that gives you a mobile version, but very likely whatever they're putting in that Windows Remote Desktop isn't going to be optimized to look good on a mobile device. So the vendor, if they're serious about mobile, is going to have to relay out all their screens to look good. And the last question, because we're just about out of time, is can you recommend any specific resources to help understand Google Analytics? Yes, self-servingly us. We actually did a Lunch with Haley webinar not too long ago on understanding Google Analytics. So if you are not already a member of our Idea Lab, the URL is right on the screen there. Go to haleymarketing.com/idealab and watch our webinar on Google Analytics. And if that's not sufficient, call us. We have people that spend a lot of time in Google Analytics, and we're happy to help. I want to thank everybody for their time today. I hope everyone found it useful. It was a big topic. I will tell you personally, it was a bit of an eye-opening experience to do all the research to see what is out there. Lots of good stuff happening in the mobile world and hopefully coming to your business soon.